Earlier this year, you may have seen a quick driving log that I did that was just a general state of how things have been going. The year has not really gone as planned, obviously, but as some kind of, I guess, way to cope, I decided to take a few road trips and vlog about them for your viewing pleasure. Before you say anything, yes, I took as many precautions as I could, wearing masks and socially distancing as best as I could. I went on 2 trips, one a day trip with a couple friends to the North Cascades National Park, and another down the west coast to the beautiful Redwoods. We'll get to that second one soon, but let's start with the North Cascades. The drive was, simply put, amazing. A beautiful and relaxing trip through heavily wooded roads. Just a couple hours north of Seattle, it's an incredibly easy and manageable drive for anyone in the area looking to get out of the house and see something new. Taking my friends Kara and Zach, we went out together because, God, we just needed to get out of the house. It's been a rough few months, and we all needed to just see something new, especially with the fall colors rolling in. On the way, we stopped in the small town of Concrete to check out the 5 B's Bakery, which is an all gluten-free bakery and eatery serving some really great food. Just look at these cupcakes. There's really great stuff here, and if you're in the area, even if you don't need gluten-free food, I highly recommend heading by and grabbing something to eat. Really worth your time, definitely worth your money. Fall is my favorite season here, just watching all the leaves turn colors and slowly fall to the ground, and to be honest, I love these gray skies as well, which is why Washington is the perfect place for me. When actually entering the national park itself, the main goal was just driving and talking and enjoying being out of the house. Stopping at Diablo Lake Vista Point, you can sense that the water here just looks, as Kara put it, like glass. With high mountains all around it, there really isn't a lot of wind to disturb the lake's surface, especially with our perspective of being so far away. On top of that, this lake has this unnatural turquoise look to it. This is due to silt that comes down the rivers that fill up the lake, that originate from mountain glaciers. According to the plaques we found at the overlook, this is called glacial flour, and it gives this lake and the Skagit River that comes from it this strange color. After a bit, we headed down to Diablo Dam, the dam that naturally creates Diablo Lake. Dams are always a bit weird when driving, and a little nerve-wracking if I'm being honest. The logical part of my mind knows it's perfectly safe, but that doesn't stop the doubt. Diablo Dam, though, is just without a doubt the coolest part of this mini-adventure. Surrounded again by these huge mountains with the calm lake on one side and a torrent of rushing water and sharp cliffs on the other. After taking in the sights, though, we headed home where I prepare for my next leg of the journey. California. The first day began as many Seattle days do with a large amount of rain. Which, while I love the rain, I don't love driving the freeway in it. From my home in Seattle, I traveled down to Longview, Washington to meet family and stay the night to get a fresh start the next day. My goal in this whole main adventure was to travel down the historic US Highway 101 down to the California Redwoods. So the next day I set off on Ocean Beach Highway across southern Washington, following the Columbia River to finally meet up with the 101 at the Astoria-Megler Bridge. Crossing over into Astoria, Oregon, I set off down the Oregon coast. Now, I've driven sections of the northern Oregon coast before, and though I love places like Seaside and especially Cannon Beach, I unfortunately didn't have time to retread familiar ground. This is all about new adventures. So I continue to head south to Tillamook, finally making my first detour to Cape Maris Lighthouse. This is a beautiful space with a short trail to the largest spruce tree in the state of Oregon, stunning cliffside views of the Pacific Ocean, and this cute little inactive lighthouse. Now this is what I wanted. Oregon's coast is littered with large cliffs and rocks, waves that crash against them, slowly eroding them into the ocean little by little. These rugged coastlines are by far the best I've ever seen, combining my favorite aspects of nature: mountains, lush green forests, and of course the blue Pacific Ocean. Continuing the journey south, I just took my time, soaking up the beautiful sights and feeling the road go by. There's a reason I'm going through the slower roads of the 101 as opposed to the much more straightforward Interstate 5. It's about taking it easy and actually seeing the countryside. Personally, I've also traveled down I-5 through Oregon quite a few times, and much of it is, to be honest, incredibly boring. especially when compared to these twisting and turning roads. Like where on the interstate can you just pull over and enjoy views like this? It's also just a reminder that god damn, this country is beautiful. There are many things about the United States that frustrate me to no end, but one thing I will defend to the end is that this country is so goddamn gorgeous. Making it to near the southern border of Oregon, it was getting late, so I got a hotel at Golden Beach and prepared for the next day's drive into California. With a much shorter distance to travel, this day was going to be less driving and more actual exploring. Once I crossed the border, I took a little stop at the Trees of Mystery. Not to see the so-called mysterious trees, but to just take a gander at these statues of the folk hero legend Paul Bunyan and his big blue ox Babe. They even got masks to prove that they too are taking the global pandemic seriously. Although Paul does not seem to be wearing his properly, but at least he tried. Nearing the true destination for the day, I stop off at a nice overlook and soak in the Pacific Ocean. I really can't get sick of that ocean smell, or of the slight fog that drifts around the cliffs. Soon after, I finally reached Redwood National Park, and drive along roads surrounded by typical run-of-the-mill trees that, as a resident of the Evergreen State, I'm very familiar with. Now, I'm excited to finally see these massive redwoods I've heard so much about, but we'll save that for a little later. First though, I went to explore Fern Canyon. A Fern Canyon is a gorgeous canyon with walls lined with ferns and moss. The canyon has a shallow river gently moving through it, continuing to knife its way through the rock, slowly eroding it away bit by bit. If you look online, you'll see that there are planks that'll bridge the gaps for you to avoid getting your shoes too wet. And yeah, those were not here for me. Though it was kind of fun to try to jump from log to cross sometimes. In the end, I still ended up with wet shoes. Thankfully though, it isn't a super long hike, but be aware of that if you ever visit. This level of lushness is not something new to me. Again, I'm from the Evergreen State, but being surrounded by it like this is just incredible. But unfortunately, it came to an end, and I took a trail that took me up to the canyon's edge and back to the start. Getting back to the car, I head out on the mission to see some damn redwood trees, and they did not disappoint. Taking a little hike off the side of the road, it's hard to kind of understand how tall and wide these trees are. You see pictures of them, I've watched documentaries of them since I was a child, and it just didn't prepare me for the real thing. Massive trees, and surrounding them just the most relaxing atmosphere I can think of. But this was just a quick exploration for today, so I went south a little to grab a hotel, before coming right back the next day for the main course, the Tall Trees Grove. Tall Trees is a grove of some of the tallest trees in the world. At about 4 miles, it's a pretty decent hike. Most of it was spent looking upwards, amazed by the size of these trees. It cannot be overstated how huge these things are. Imagine being surrounded by trees that have stood tall since the Black Death, Julius Caesar, or hell, some of these trees are older than Alexander the Great. After crossing the walk-through tree, a tree that you walk through, it's a long descent until you're finally at the Tall Trees Grove Loop, which is a simple 1 mile stretch. The first part features some of the biggest of the big redwoods, the tallest of the tall trees, with the back half littered with other old beautiful trees covered in moss and branching all over the path. The hardest part was, without a doubt, the hike back up. It's a fairly brutal incline if you haven't hiked in a while, which I have not. But there are benches littering the path that give you a nice place to rest and just look at the beauty around you. After leaving the park, I took my time, going to one last overlook to soak it all in one last time. The wonder of such a grand old forest that just reminded me of how small I was in the grand scheme of things. But I took my memories and headed on south to take a little drive through the Avenue of Giants, just soaking in one last look at these colossal trees before continuing south to get a hotel for the night. After that, it's pretty dull. I hooked up with the I-5 and headed north for a good 12 hours, tracking through the brutally mundane Northern California I-5 corridor, which is brown land as far as the eye can see until Lake Shasta, which itself had most of its hills burned, and the lake is shallower and sadder looking now than I can ever remember. This is why I did not travel through I-5 on the way down. It's fast, it's the most effective path, but God, is it brown and depressing. Oregon is slightly better, but By the time I hit Portland, it's night. And then by Seattle, I'm craving bed more than anything else. Most of the drive was an unmemorable haze as I returned to my home and sunk back into my normal routine. The memories I made, though, driving up and down the coast and gazing upon these giants are not ones I'll soon forget. And if you ever have the privilege, I cannot recommend the drive from Astoria, Oregon to the California Redwoods enough. I had planned on doing a few more travel kinds of videos this year, but of course, 2020 happened. So let's look forward to a productive and beautiful 2021. If you enjoyed this little vlog, please help support this video and my channel by liking, subscribing, but most important to me, leave a comment and tell me what you think of this adventure, this video, or your own experiences in Oregon, Washington, or California. Or just hikes in general, just lay it on me, I'm happy to hear it. Thank you very much for watching and stay rad.
Okay, thank God.